My mom was married for about 5 years, I want to say. And I never liked him. I never liked him from the moment I met him. I never liked him. And I remember in the beginning, it was morally forced on me. And he knew I didn't like him. He knew I didn't want anything to do with him. And instead of trying to make me comfortable, it's just a, well, you don't have a reason to not like him. Why don't you like him? And I feel like at that time, kids can get vibes from people that other people may not be able to. But I never liked him, and then it came to a point to where he was touching me and making me uncomfortable. I'm not gonna cry. It came to a point to where he was touching me and making me uncomfortable, and I didn't tell my mom because they would get into arguments where I could hear them arguing. And my mom would say things like, I'm not going to be in competition with my own daughter, and things like that. Instead of, you're not going to be doing this to my child, there would just be things said. I felt like if I did tell her this would be another reason for her to hate me. And I didn't want to make, I know that would make my mom feel bad. It didn't feel like a loving situation. I knew it would make my mom feel bad. I knew in some type of way I'd be blamed for it, because it was something that I was doing or whatever. So she did ask me a lot of times, and I just lied. And on top of that, he also would have these conversations or side conversations with me about how if I did tell, I would get in trouble because I wanted it. Because I never made it a big issue, or I never said like no. And so, you know, this guy was in the army, and he told me one time, he was like, if I wanted to do something to you, I could, and no one in this house would ever know. And I'm like, yeah, they would, because I would scream and my mom would hear me and stuff like that. And so this one particular time, I was sitting down on the floor, I was watching TV, and out of nowhere, he comes from behind me and he completely covers my mouth and nose. He completely has my arms, like I can't move. And it was the scariest thing that I think I may have ever been through, because I really felt like no one could assault you while in the same house as your parent, and your parent not know, because you could scream or you could make a sound. And I couldn't scream and I couldn't make a sound. And it never got as far as him actually penetrating me. And so me being a child, I was like 11 years old. Me being a child, I believed him when he said that I would get in trouble because I didn't say no or to stop. And because of who my mom was. So it's not that I didn't think that she wouldn't believe me. It's the fact that I thought that she would feel some type of way about me because her husband took interest in her daughter. And even after she found out, I mean, she still was in contact with him and talked to him and stuff. Like, it didn't really change anything. But anyways, I'm gonna move on. But simple things like being around my male cousins. I know with my dad, like, it was always a problem. And my thing is, a child, especially around family, is not expecting that family to view them anything else other than family. And for you to treat that child as if they are a whore for wanting to be around family is unfair to me. But I'm gonna move on from that and now talk about how mothers will sabotage your relationship. You can be in a good relationship with a man who makes you happy, and you will have mothers who don't want to see that you happy or don't want that happiness for you, and will basically give you the worst advice that they can. Every time that your man screws up, they are making you feel like you have to make certain choices and do certain things, or you're weak. What a lot of people don't understand is when you're in a relationship is not easy. A marriage isn't easy. People make mistakes, and I'm not saying you should stay with people who cheat on you. It's not all about cheating. I'm not talking about that. But I've definitely been in situations where I felt like, I'm in high school. A man should not be, a boy who's in high school who probably does not even have a job, I should not be looking for him to get my nails done. I should not be looking at him to give me money to do certain things. Or even if we're not in high school, if we're in college, do you know how hard it is and how much you have to sacrifice and how financially straining college is? Like, if I ask a family member for some money for something, I want to get my nails done, I should not be hearing, where's your boyfriend? Like, he's in class. Like, what are you talking about? And what a lot of daughters have to realize is when your mother is bitter, when she has not had a successful relationship herself, when she's constantly exposed you to toxic crap, they have no space or no type of reasoning as to why they should have their mouth open trying to tell you about your relationship. And that's the thing. If you want to take advice from somebody who's unhappy, who has never been in a happy relationship, and who is toxic, you're going to take their advice and do what they would do, and then you're going to be out of a relationship because that person didn't sign up to be in a relationship with your mom. That person is with you. And I've never had this issue with my mom of telling me certain things or trying to sabotage my relationship by giving me bad advice because I never asked her for advice. But if you don't know, I have been previously married, and my mom had an issue with him not being black. He was Hispanic, and one time in particular, we went out to eat, and when I got up from the table, she asked him, she was steadily calling him Mexican, and he wasn't Mexican. And then she asked him for the correct, like, what he was, and he told her, and then she's like, well, what's the difference? Like, and then she pulls me to the side, and she's like, your great-grandmother and stuff wouldn't agree to that, but it's a different time and stuff like that. Basically letting me know, like, making it awkward. Instead of being happy for me, making it awkward. And then when I left, she basically threatened to, he was Hispanic, she basically threatened to call, I guess immigration on him and have him deported. Because me and her got into an argument. So that's about all that I've had an issue with her as far as my relationships. But you should still just be aware of the mothers that try to sabotage relationships purposely because they aren't happy, because they are out there. So I'm gonna kind of move on to abusive relationships. I've seen my mom in a lot. Every relationship my mom has been in has been abusive. I remember at times where we were kids and being woken up out of our sleep because the guy that she's married to, who's in the army, is on his way home because they're having an argument. So he's on his way home, and it's like 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and we are in the car on our way to a shelter, a women's shelter that's like 5 hours away, just for her to change her mind halfway there and come back and still happen to get up and go to school the next day. My mom has asked me to go and get her knives, go and get her things during arguments. And I remember one time, I think like the very first time she asked me to do that, like I went and got a knife. I was scared. I got a butter knife, and she was so mad. She was so mad. But what do you do when your mom has instilled fear in you and she's trying to make it seem like her life is in danger? What do? You go get a knife? Like, and this stuff has happened before I was 11. This stuff happened when I was young, like before she was even with her second husband. She was with my brother and sister's dad. And so this is like when I was through the ages of 5 and 7. My mom has had a gun pulled out on her in front of us. My sister has been like kidnapped by her dad, and the police chasing him and him having to bring her back. I found out a couple of years ago, my mom told us that my brother and sister dad had died. And I remember this like it was yesterday because my brother and sister were crying. She told us that he had died, and for years they went without talking to their dad, just to come find out he wasn't dead. Like, he took a chance one day and called my grandfather's house, and we were there, and he said my grandpa was shook because he thought he was dead. And I got to sit down face to face with him and talk to him, and I never just take one side, but I know how my mom is, and my mom definitely would lie to me about the simplest things. So he said that he was actually in the process of trying to, you know, get my brother and sister back. They were going to court, and my mom straight up told him that before she lets him take them from her, she would put all of us in a car and drive us into a lake and kill all of us. And my mom, if you know my mom, you know you don't play with her when it comes to stuff like that. She will do it. Like, I don't know how we made it. I don't know. But, and like I said, it's not me completely just always taking his side, because my mom had problems with my dad. And my mom would do things like tell me that I can go to my dad's house, have me get all my stuff together, get so excited and sit there all night, and he never show up. Just for me to like call my dad. Like, I finally got to an age where I could get his number and talk to him and stuff like that. And I finally got like tired of it. He came to pick me up one time, and I said, why didn't you come get me? Like, I would ask him why he never came and got me, and he'd be like, your mom told me I couldn't come get you. So then it made me sit back and think of all the times that she told me that he was coming and he didn't come. Like, it takes a creative mind to come up with some of these things. But my mom just always had this perfect picture in her head of what a family should be. And it didn't include outside dads. It didn't include our dads. It included us and whoever she was with or whoever she wanted to marry. For the longest, I wasn't even allowed to see my dad, and my mom didn't even know. But anytime I went to my grandmother's house, she would still talk to my dad and communicate with my dad, and she would allow my dad to come and see me. And one time in particular, she let my dad come see me, and my mom popped up, and my mom thought my dad kidnapped me, and she called him crying and all this other stuff, and her and my grandma got into a really bad argument. My mom would just always have this story of having to do it on her own, and how my dad wasn't involved and all of this and all of that. But everybody else besides my mom, like, had a different story. Everybody else's story was just different from hers, and I know my mom would lie to me. There's times that I'd be at my dad's house and she'd call my dad or say, well, she has to come home because we're going on a trip or something. And I come home. I remember one time I came home and I'm like, you told my dad that I had to come home because I had to do this. And she's like, so? I lied. Like, that was my mom's go-to answer anytime she lied to me, or anytime I didn't like something. I told her the answer was so. Like, she's the adult, and that's just that. So I always, in the back of my mind, was afraid of being with someone who would eventually hit me. But I actually, in my first real relationship, became the type of person who couldn't keep their hands to themselves. And after a while, it disgusted me because I'd get so upset and so frustrated that I'd feel the need to hit my partner. And I didn't like that. And that was just another reason to get out of that relationship. Because there's no reason I should be with someone who frustrates me. And I have a right to be angry about the things that I were angry about, but I'd let someone sit there and antagonize me to the point to where I felt like it's okay to stay. I'll just teach them a lesson by hitting them. And that is not okay. That's not okay. Like, or I wanted them to understand how upset I was and I wasn't like beating the shit out of anybody or anything like that, but I'd just be quick to grab something of theirs and damage it or swing on them or something like that. Like, and that's not okay. This is turning into me, from me going point to point to just kind of me venting. You know I said, you know, about attacking your child's character and pouring more hate and more negative things into your child than you do love. But also just being affectionate. Listen, I am a love type girl, and I feel like because of that void that I've had in me so long, of my mom and my dad not being there, it makes me so desperate to have to be with somebody who loves me and marry them and have a family and have a happy home. And I get in relationship with these people who are so family oriented, and me and my mom went years on and off not talking. And every single time I talked to her, like when I first moved out of her house, my dad got emergency custody of me, and that was the first time I actually put my hands back on my mom. And it was because at the time we were living with my grandpa. She had went missing. My mom went missing, and she would do this often where she'd drop us off with the grandparents, she'd leave, and she wouldn't show up till 3 days later, and my grandparents cuss her out and whatever. But this particular time was more than 3 days. We ended up finding her car at someone's house who had gone on vacation, and someone called the police because they were house sitting. They would come and check on the house, and the car was there. It was parked by the woods, and it was all her stuff. And I remember us crying and literally thinking she was dead. To see her walking in town, I think my grandma came to my grandpa's house and she was walking in town, and I remember my grandma and grandpa cursing her out, and like literally just her sitting there like a child and them scolding her for everything, and her not listening to them. And it became a point to where I would go to school and there'd be kids at my school who'd be like, where's your mom, and stuff like that, or would tell me that they've seen my mom, and I hadn't seen my mom in a few weeks. Like, I hadn't seen my mom, and kids at school are telling me, oh yeah, we seen her with 50 and stuff like that. It was a guy named 50. We seen her with this guy and stuff. Apparently, I guess it was a guy she was dating. But anyway, she showed up back to the house, and she was going off on us, saying that we needed to clean up, but all of the mess was hers. And I had it. And so I cleaned up, I picked up all of my stuff, and I took all of her stuff and I put it in a pile. It was probably a smart ass thing of me to do, but I put it in a pile and I didn't pick it up. I did not pick it up. And she got upset, and she grabbed a belt and she whacked me with it a few times, and I didn't give her the reaction that she wanted from me. So then she resorted to putting her hands on me, and that was the first time I pushed her. I full-blown pushed her, and we were standing there, and I said, if you put your hands on me again, do not put your hands on me again. And she stood there and I stood there, and then I walked out of the house. My grandpa was like hitting me. He was literally hitting me, telling me, you don't put your hands on your mother, she's disciplining you, and he was literally hitting me. And I just walked out of the house, and I called my dad, and when I walked out of the house, I seen my mom pulling off, and she left. And I had my dad come pick me up right then and there. And my dad ended up taking me like to a court, and I talked to a judge, and I told him that's where I wanted to stay, and my dad got emergency custody of me. And my mom, when I first moved in with my dad, called me and left me over 100 calls, over 100 messages. They were coming to my phone back to back to back to back. She was cursing me out, calling me names, and saying all this stuff about me. And I want to say one of the things she was very, very upset about is I think they wanted to cut her off of child support or something like that, because she was getting child support from my dad, and I think she was worried about that or something. But she was just flooding me with text messages and calls, and she was literally harassing me. I thought I was gonna have to get my number changed. But my mom's like that. Like, my mom, if my mom wants to argue, there is no walking away, there is no running away, there is no not answering her phone calls, there's no not answering her texts. She's going to call and text and text. Like, she sent me over 100 like text messages, and called me over 100 times back to back. And so I maybe visited her in between the time 10th grade year and me graduating. I may have visited her maybe twice. And I know the first time, well, I don't know which times exactly. She was living in Memphis this particular time I went to see her, and she wanted to buy me a shirt that it was so ugly. Me and my mom don't have the same taste in clothes, but she wanted me to buy me clothes. She wanted to take me shopping, and she wanted me to get this shirt, and I did not want the shirt. I didn't like the shirt. And she got upset, and she started calling me trash and told me that that's why I'm just shit and I'm not gonna be shit. And like, let me get the stuff that I did want, but like, once we got home, she took it from me, and said that I couldn't have it. And she was cursing me out and just picking me apart and talking about my hair and all of that stuff, and talking about my clothes and saying that I'm just trash and I'm not gonna ever be anything with myself. And I left, and she told me I was never welcome to her house again over clothes. I was never welcome to her house again. I told her I was never coming back. And then she invited me to her house again. This is the time that I went with my husband, and she made the whole race remarks and stuff like that. And I ended up leaving, and it ended up being an argument and stuff, because me and him slept in the same bed once we got there. Not that she had a lot of options for us to sleep, but she was like, you are sleeping in a bed with your boyfriend and in front of my children. Mind you, my sister's like 4 years younger than me and stuff like that. But she was just talking about how I was disrespecting her children. And I told her, well, we are married. And it crushed her, because she thought that I had this wedding and that I didn't invite her. This was something about me that she didn't know. And so it crushed her. And because I didn't tell her before that I was married. And that's when she started like then threatening to have him and his family deported. But I think I have sat here and vented a lot. I could go on and on about the things that I have been through, about the things that I have lived through, about my mom just doing different things to humiliate me. From my hair, when I lived with my mom, she didn't do a good job at taking care of my hair, and so my hair would never she would over chemically process my hair, and my hair would fall out, and my hair was very thin and it wouldn't grow. And my hair was something I struggled with for a very long time while I lived with her. And she decided to one day point that out to everyone, and tell them how much I hated my hair because it won't grow. And I had never felt so, when I tell y'all I was so but she had no problem at making an example of me in front of other people when it came to displaying my insecurities or just putting me out there. And like I said, it sucked, from the way that she dressed me and how she talked to me and just everything. And I made it through this entire video without crying, and I'm super happy about it. And I think that's why it took me so long to just get to the point to where I was venting. But I did, as I got older, try to give my mom more tries. And it's like my mom just knew all the buttons to push that makes me, I could be the most calmest person and get along with the most difficult people there are to work with. But my mom just knows the things to say, and that would just completely get me out of character. And then she tried to pretend like she's not doing it. And it took for me to have my sister on three-way with us one day and not have my sister say anything, for her to see what I'm talking about. Like, no, she's starting this, because she'd tell my sister a completely different story, and then she'd run to my sister and try to make it seem like I'm doing it. And my sister had to tell her one time, like, no, Ma, you did do this, you did say this, I heard you. Like, it would take for me to like have a third person there for, and even then she's still not wrong. So as I got older, I did try to have a better relationship with her, but of course everyone around me, it upset me that I didn't have a good relationship with my mom. But everyone around me was like, well, you've been through this before, like, this isn't, like, you know she's like this, you know she's gonna do this, you know she's gonna piss you off, and yet you still walk into it, you still do this. That's not easy to do when it's your mom and you desperately want that relationship, because everybody around you has that relationship. All of my cousins had a relationship with their parents where they could go to their parents and tell them certain things and talk to them about certain things, and their mom helped them with certain things. I didn't have any of that, and I wanted it. And so it was hard for me to just close that door. But there's certain times where I just had to block my mom. You know, I got to the point to where, you know, I went to therapy, and my therapist is like, well, when she's getting like that, you let her know, Mom, I love you, but the conversation is going this way, and now I'm getting off of the phone. And I started having to use tools that I was learning to learn how to deal with her. And it eventually got to a point to where she, I guess, did not like being blocked. And so she'd be good for a little while, and then it'd go back down south. But there's so many things that I look back on that still hurt me. Like, it hurts me that my mom couldn't help me pick out a prom dress. I think the number one thing that hurt me the most, and still hurts me, is that, you know, when it was time for me to graduate, I did not think, I thought my graduation would be the one thing, the one time I would get to see my mom, the one time she'd be there to support me for something, the one time that, you know, I thought even if she didn't come, I thought there would just be like, oh, well, when the graduation gets close, she'll tell me she can't come. I told my mom about my graduation, and in the same breath, she said, well, you know I'm probably not coming. It's probably, I'm not gonna come. I said, okay. And she didn't come, so. There's just, me and my mom have been through a lot. And she recently had a heart attack. It wasn't looking good. At that moment, you know, I had a conversation with my siblings, and we all just agreed to leave the past in the past. But it was crazy because right before she had a heart attack, that's when we had the conversation she was trying to say like, you know, we had the conversation of me growing up, because like I said, we had tried to have this conversation so many times before, and she would dismiss my feelings and say, I've lived through that part of my life and I've gotten over it. Why are you so stuck in the past? And I tell her, so because you're not taking accountability for the things you've put me through. You've not acknowledged it. You're making me feel like I should just get over it, like it is what it is, and it's not your fault that we went through what we went through. And but this one time we talked before she had her heart attack, and it was a screaming match, because this was one time the time that I invited her to my home, and when she got to my house, she left. She was upset and she left because she had to pee, and I'm like, well, let's go inside and pee. But she was adamant that she was gonna go pee at the store, and before I could even come, she wanted me to drive. And before I could even come back to the car and get in the car, because I'm thinking she's coming behind me, she says she has to pee. It's already an issue that I text her and told her to let me know when she was outside so I could come outside and greet her and walk her in. She just got mad. She drove off. She was crying hysterically. She thought that me and my boyfriend were laughing at her because we have a Rottweiler and at the time we had a pit. But they were friendly dogs, and she told me that she wasn't afraid of them. So when she made a comment about coming inside to use the restroom, she said something about the dogs, and me and my boyfriend kind of chuckled, because we're used to when people come over there, they're afraid of the dogs, but the dogs are like big babies. They wouldn't hurt flies, and they just, especially the pit, like she was more scared of you than you were of her. Now they'll let you know when someone's in the house, and they can be very intimidating, but they never attacked anyone. But we've never been in a situation where anybody was trying to attack us either. But if you're not trying to attack us, they've never attacked anyone. But she was claiming she wasn't afraid of the dogs, but didn't want to come in the house. And then my boyfriend came outside, and I was bringing him outside to meet her, and she completely was not trying to pay attention to him, did not care to meet him, would not get out of the car to meet him. Yeah, and I was just like, well, let's go inside to use the restroom. And I was in the driver's seat, and that's when I was getting out of the driver's seat and I was going inside the house. I'm like, come on, like, you gotta use the bathroom, just come. She got out of the passenger seat, got in the driver's seat, and left. She was mad. She didn't want to hear it. She started crying hysterically, saying that we were laughing at her because she had to pee and she don't think it's funny. I was so excited to see her, and I even told her at one point, I'm like, let's just have a good day. Like, it's not issues. We were planning to go eat somewhere. Let's just go eat. Let's just go have a good day. And it didn't work. So, but we ended up having a long discussion. And there's times in the conversation where she tried to accuse me of torturing her children. Like I wasn't nice to her children. And I'm like, you are not gonna now try to turn this into trying to turn my brother and sister against me, because we are siblings, and siblings fight. We fought all the time. They did shit to me, I did shit to them. I was older than them, so sometimes my shit hit different than their shit. So she tried to say I terrorized them and was just horrible to them. And I called my sister and asked her if she felt that way. She was like, no. Like, I don't know why you and mama going back and forth. I don't know why she would say something like that, but I definitely don't feel like you tortured us. Like, the problem is you wanted to give me the third parent responsibility, and to these kids who see me as their sibling and then would get upset if I tried to discipline them or tell them what to do, because you felt like I didn't have that right because I wasn't their parent. It got to the point to where I literally had to simplify everything. I don't want to say dumb down, but simplify everything. And it just really came down to she did not like the boundaries that I had in place for her being my parent. She didn't like, I had to explain to her, like, you did not raise me, you were not a mother figure to me. I have gone years at a time without talking to you. You cannot just pop up in my life whenever you want to and try to tell me what to do, try to make decisions for me, and get upset when I don't make the decisions that you want. The time to raise me has passed and gone. So you need to understand that when you come at me and you're aggressive like this, I don't owe you to sit there and take it. I've taken enough from you. And she felt like the way that I treated her as an adult was so unfair. And I had to then compare it to her, to how she treated me as a child. And then, like, we finally got somewhere. She finally apologized to me. She said she didn't realize that that's how she was making me feel. I mean, it was crazy. I've never in a million years thought I'd ever get an apology from my mom. But she apologized to me. She told me that she thought that that was okay. She acknowledged that she did still, like, kind of try to pick at certain things. And I had to tell her, Mom, I thought we said we were over this, correct? You said you weren't mad about it. So why? Because she would try to go back to, well, you told me to text you when I came outside. Like, she'd go back to little stuff to nitpick. And I'd be like, okay, you said you weren't angry about it. And she's like, I'm not angry about it. And I'm like, so why are we discussing this? If you're not angry about it, if you didn't take offense to it, and I've already explained to you why I did that, why, it's like I had to talk to her like that for her to understand. And so we talked, she apologized, and then she ended up having her heart attack. And now I can tell there's times where I'm talking to her and she wants to disagree with me, or she wants to, like, it, I can tell, like, conversations that we have now that would usually turn into an argument, she bites it. She bites her tongue. And she tells me now, she texts me all the time, and she'll tell me that she's proud of me, or that she loves me, or that I'm beautiful. And it's weird. It's weird. It's so weird. And I'm trying not to cry. It's so weird. I'm trying to appreciate it, because the relationship that I have with her now is a relationship that I have prayed for. It's a relationship that I've prayed for, and, you know, I'm glad we're here. And I just want to end this video on the note of, because I know this was a video about, like, black moms and daughters, just to shine a light on her experience with her mother. Like I said, her mother never got along. They were always fighting. They were always at each other's throats. But now they're like best friends, so I don't know. But there's a lot of traumatic things that have been said and done in our household that if I sat here and tried to explain every single detail, every little thing, this video would be days long. But I think that this should just give you a little bit of, shed a little bit of light on some of the things that I've been through. I know other people go through that. And like I said, next week I'm going to be uploading my video where I talk about both of my parents, and I guess I'll focus more on my dad, because like I said, most of this stuff happened through my childhood, and as I'm getting older, a lot of it is kind of just fading away and blacking out. And so I just wanted to share my story and share some of the things that I've been through before I forget it all. And I know through a lot of this video I've kind of just laughed a lot of stuff off, but it's to keep from crying. I've cried about this stuff for so long, and you know, your mental health is number one, and you have to take care of yourself. And growing up, I've seen a lot of black people around me, or black kids around me, where they try to share their mental health stories with, you know, people or adults, and try to talk to them and tell them what's going on, and they get told that they're doing things for attention. Yeah, but this video is longer, probably longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm gonna end it right here. And like I said, next week I will be talking about both of my parents, so I will be talking about even more stuff. And don't be afraid to send messages. of the things that you've gone through, of things that you have experienced. I don't mind talking to people about it. But yeah, this is just to show a lot of you that you are not alone and that it will get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and that this is more common than you think, and that this happens a lot more often than you think. I definitely think my mom has a lot of serious, I'm not saying that I think she's, because I think she's crazy, she has a lot of serious mental issues, and I definitely think she would probably be, you know, diagnosed with a lot of things. But I'm not a doctor, and I don't know, maybe it's something that should be open to as we get older. But like I said, now our relationship is phenomenal, and I love her to death. I love her so much. I'm glad we were finally able to get to where we are now. And yeah, so make sure you subscribe. The things that I probably couldn't get into this video, I'll probably get into next video, because they probably correlate. And I will see you guys in the next video.